Hello, everyone. I'm just getting my screen shared and then we can get started. Let's see. Do, 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 do. All right. So welcome, everybody. The first few minutes is just going to be a quick introduction. So if you're just getting in and getting settled down, don't worry, you're not going to miss anything fun yet. Um, this
Will you
is the
be,
finances.
will you be sending the recording after or no?
Yes, I'll be sending a
Oh,
recording
okay.
out afterwards.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for asking. Um, so tonight is the finances of high tunnel production. I'm Emily. I work with New Entry. I do technical assistance with farmers that go through our programs. Our mission is to foster resilience in local, regional, and national food systems by training a new generation of farmers to produce food that is nutritious, culturally connected, and accessible to all individuals. There's three main sectors of New Entry. Right now, we're in farmer training. We do a lot of work with farmers to help them get their businesses going and run businesses that are going to be viable into the future. We also do work with food access and run a food hub. And we also do some national work where we help other uh, land-based training programs teach other farmers. So if everyone can just put into the chat your name, where you're coming from, and what farm you're with, that would be great. Um, and you can rename yourself and add your pronouns if you'd like by following these instructions up here. Please mute yourself unless you have a question. And just so y'all know, this meeting is being recorded. At the end of the workshop, there's going to be a survey. It'll pop up in a little window afterwards. If you can fill it out, please do. It's super helpful for us. They are very, very quick. Surveys are part of how we fund these workshops. So by you filling it out, that helps us to fund more free workshops in the future. It makes the people that give us money very happy to know whether or not you're learning from the workshops or like the workshops. And you can give us any kind of feedback you like. If there's something that you love, let me know. If there's something that you hated, also let me know. I also get better every time I do these things. So hopefully I continue to do better. And yeah, so please fill out the surveys. Uh, it's very helpful for us. This workshop is one of many in this workshop series. Right now, we are here with the finances of high tunnel production, and we have 5 more workshops to go, which is pretty exciting. The next one is going to be on strategic crop planning and variety selection. Um, the registration for this just went up on our website, so you can sign up tonight or after the workshop. I'll put a link in the chat. Uh, we've got some really good ones coming up, so hopefully you can make it to a few more of these. There'll also be a farm tour in February at Farmer Dave's. The registration for that is not up yet, so just keep an eye open if you're in the area. Um, there's going to be more of these workshops. They are every second Tuesday of each month until May. And we also are currently we're currently registering people for our farm business planning course starting in January. So those are some nice, fun upcoming events. Today's workshop, we have Jesse Wright from UNH. She can introduce herself when she takes over. We're also, if you're interested in getting paid to share your financial records, we are recruiting small-scale vegetable farmers that have 2+ years of growing experience to participate in our benchmarking study. It's pretty easy. So if you're interested in doing that, just send me an email or drop your email address in the chat and I can contact you and get you registered and signed up. And thank you to our funder, Northeast Extension Risk Management Education. That's all my quick spiel, so I'm going to hand it over to Jesse. And
Thanks, Emily.
stopping my share. There we go.
Okay. I'm so excited. We have 32 people here. I was just reading where you all are from, and we've got New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Illinois, all kinds of folks. Thanks for being here and being excited about farm financials. As you can imagine, I'm not always the most popular gal in the room when I have my extension meetings with farmers. They always want to chat with our production folks, right? Like, what's this cool new pest and disease that's happening? What's the research say about post-harvest handling of peonies? And I'm over here like, does anyone want to look at this cool spreadsheet I made? And so I'm pumped that you all want to hang with me in my spreadsheets. I'll just start by saying like farm finances and budgets and spreadsheets and record keeping can be this like dread-filled, dull thing. And doing it on Zoom, it's nighttime, it's cold here in New Hampshire, like it can be a drag, right? And so part of what I think my job is to have this be engaging. And from you all, I need participation in order for that to happen. I don't want to be like a sage on the stage. I want you to ask questions. I want you to come off mute and say like, oh, that number that we're talking about doesn't feel good. Or how did you know that? Or, Lisa, what's your experience with, Caterpillar tunnel expenses? And so, yeah, just really starting out with like, we do our best learning as adults when we can really dig our fingers in and engage. And that's hard to do online, but we're going to do the best we can. And if you all have questions or want to stop and explore something more, please stop me. I'm happy to go with the pace of the group. And okay, I'm going to close the chat and try and do some technology things here with the PowerPoint. Here we go. Screen here. And I'm gonna go like this. And I'm gonna swap these out. Okay. I can see some faces. Emily, I can see your face, and you're gonna tell me that that looks great.
It looks wonderful, Jesse. Thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, we're here with Tufts, thanks to Nurmeef, to talk about the finances of high tunnel production. And that's pretty exciting. That we promised you in the advertising for this course, this session, that we would talk about enterprise budgets and record keeping essentials and simplify tracking tools and go through live examples. And when I looked back at this, I was like, wow, that's a lot for 2 hours, but we can give it a go. And so I think best laid plans, right? The best laid plans for an audience. I want this to be tailored to you all. So again, if you have questions, but also just like grounding us in a goal of we're not going to become experts over a 2 hour period, right? And so we're painting with like real broad brushstrokes, and the best thing we can do is not get discouraged if we don't get things right away or we need to ask more questions later on. Emily and the folks at Tufts New Entry and me and your local extensions all have great staff who are available to help with questions after this. So we're going to do our best here. Okay. I loved that most of you were farmers, and so I'm going to talk tonight to farmers in the room. And if I saw some like conservation district staff in the chat, and just go with it, pretend like you're a farm. We're going to go through these questions kind of as if you were like a farm that you were working with. Okay, again, when we start to talk about farm business management, it can be pretty darn easy to get lost in the details and to feel that dread creep in. So I just wanted to start tonight by realizing that and saying like, I don't know a lot of farmers who got into farming because they love to keep track of money in and money out, or they love to go on a computer after a long, hot or wet day. But if you are one of those farms who started to get into business record keeping, you can come sit next to me because we could have a lot of fun. But seriously, before we go into learning mode, I wanted to ground us here in some of the goals of as a way of setting ourselves up. There's a question on the screen. What does your farm look like in September 2026? So now we're sitting here. If you're watching the recording, FYI, this is December of 2025. And I want you to think for a few seconds about your personal goals within agriculture, right? I do a lot of work in my job at UNH Cooperative Extension with holistic management, thinking about the big picture on a farm and how many lives are attached to that farm. So let's just take 30 or so seconds. I'll set myself a little timer here to say, what's the vision you have? When you think about what your farm business looks like in September 26, what does it look like? What comes to mind? Okay. Does anyone feel like coming off mute and sharing? I mean, you're welcome. You're welcome also to type in the chat, but I feel like typing takes so long sometimes.
Jesse, I'll talk.
I know that voice. Hi, Liz.
You can hear me. Oh, good. Just September would be planting a lot of winter greens. Hopefully we'll have more high tunnels and we'll just be on our schedules for planting for the winter growing season.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Was there anything like different that came to mind about September 26th that would be different from September 24?
I think having more, I hope to have more high tunnels. But then also hopefully at that point I have a better sense of what is really profitable and what I can sell and what I have a market for. I feel like by that point, hopefully I'll have that more dialed in. Yeah, I'll be a little bit more confident.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Ripping the Band-Aid of being the first person who comes off mute. I appreciate you. I promise I didn't pay her to be here. Okay, so I think it's helpful to, let me get this chat out of the way here. Okay, I think it's helpful to remember those end goals when we're about to do something like potentially uncomfortable, like dealing with budgets, right? And like I know each of you came here tonight with different goals. Liz was talking about scaling up and having more high tunnels, but some folks might be saying like, how do I cut back? Like I'm feeling too busy and I need to do less. And so yeah, all of those things, just keeping them in mind as we're going through this process of kind of deciding where we're making money feels like a really important thing to keep in mind. Farming is a business, as we know, and the business needs to be profitable usually to stick around. So generally, when I ask farmers this, I hear the goal come out in this way that's like, I have a goal of making a living farming. And on the screen, I have a little asterisk here because that's going to be slightly different for all of you if we get into the weeds. But generally, I think that's a standard we can all relate to. What are the things we need to do if we want to meet that end goal of making a living, right? If we want to make a living from our farm, we need to look at all the parts of our business and our communities to find out where are the places that we want to invest in. Are there enough restaurants to support a wholesale channel? Can I sell CSA shares to families in my area and meet that sales goal? If I get more animals, is there a butcher date that fits my timeline, right? even if there's some of you out there who have not started your businesses yet, you're making projections of what you could potentially sell and who may buy it. But after you are in business, which I think most of you here tonight are, we need to be tracking what's actually happening. And I have this keep track of beans as of my record keeping section here, because one of the most important things we can do is be tracking what's actually happening to see if we're on path to meet those goals. And in order to effectively track what's going on in our business, we need to develop some systems that work for you. Often I see farms working in QuickBooks or Excel, but to do that effectively and consistently is harder than sometimes we like to talk about, especially us folks here at Extension who are like, yep, just make a record keeping system. So we're going to talk through some options here tonight. And I just wanted to get started with, what is the point of all that record keeping? So try and bring up the participants list here. I'll bring it over here so I can see a show of hands. Bean counting in farming really is, how do we create these 3 financial documents that you see on the screen, right? Balance sheets, net income statements, and cash flow statements. And I would love just to know the familiarity of these 3 documents of the people in the room. So could you give me a like thumbs up emoji or a raise hand if you kind of know what these things are, you have them for your farm, you consider yourself familiar. Okay, I saw like 7 at one point. So maybe some late folks, some clappers, love it. I'm gonna guess about half, maybe a little less. So that's good. That gives me some information on how long I should spend going over those 3 items. If you aren't super familiar with them yet, just know they're snapshots of your business's financial health, right? They're really important financial statements to create, to update, to compare year to year to see how your business is progressing. Banks love them because they offer kind of this big picture view of how your farm is doing. Here's a little bit more about what each ones are, but basically these 3 documents, the balance sheet, and the income statement, and the cash flow statement, they help business owners answer questions like, can I afford to hire someone? Do I need a loan this spring to buy supplies? Or how much is all of my milking equipment worth, right? But sometimes, as much as banks and lenders love them and they can tell us really good information, they don't answer all of the questions really that we need to ask ourselves about how to approach the day-to-day decision making on a farm. Should I plant more peonies? Should I invest in a carrot harvester? Is another high tunnel worth an investment? Since you signed up for this course, I'm sure some of you came with some of those questions today. So I'd like to spend a couple of minutes just chatting about those questions that you brought. What about this course was like intriguing to you, I guess? And that, I think, leads to this question that I'm going to ask you. What question about your farm's profitability would you love to be able to answer by the end of next year? So the end of 2025. And I'm going to have you put this in the chat, but not yet. Hold on just one second. I know this seems like kind of a big question, but I want you to think about it through a little bit of a narrow scope. Instead of like, yeah, I'd love to know how to make money farming by the end of next year. That would be nice. I'm not sure I have all the answers to that, but instead of that, if we can drill down a little bit and like find what's tangible underneath all of that. Like, is going to the farmer's market profitable? Or even one step under that, how many bouquets do I need to sell at a farmer's market in order for it to make sense for me to send an employee? So I'm going to set a timer here for 30 seconds, and you start thinking and typing in your answer, but don't press send until I say go. We're going to try this thing called a waterfall style, where everyone like hits enter at the same time. And then so nobody's influenced by somebody else's answer. So
Quick question, Jesse.
yeah, tell
The
me.
question was, what questions do you have about your farm's profitability in 2025, right?
Yeah, it should be on the screen, right?
Oh yeah, it is. There it is. Okay.
Perfect. I can type it into the chat if that's helpful for folks. What question about your
Just
farms? Oh, you're the best. Okay, so 30 seconds starting now, and then in 30 seconds I'm gonna hit go, and then okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, go. Oh my gosh, you guys did so awesome. Okay, so we're gonna poke through here for the folks who are watching the recording. They don't see these questions, so I'm just gonna read a couple out loud. Got to get a sense of the group. How many CSA shareholders can I support on the tunnels I have? What's the best thing to invest in for starting up a farm? What kind of market, CSA or wholesale, would lead to more profit next year? How to afford to fence the entire perimeter? Can I afford an automatic seeder? What would be the best place to start if I'm looking to have more space next year? Will workshops about aquaponics make us money? Awesome job getting really tangible about that. I love that. You drilled down really deep. And lots and lots and lots of other good stuff. What's the lowest I can charge for winter greens? What restaurant sales targets do I need to hit? These are really good. Thanks for sharing. I think it's helpful for me to know what kinds of questions that you all are asking, and just for you all to see and read through this and say like, yeah, we're all asking the same questions, right? Like just because I don't have the answers to these does not mean I'm a bad farmer or I am behind. Like we're all going through the same things of how do I continue to make this business a thing that I want to do and profitable and feeding me and my community, right? So a lot of the questions that I'm seeing here are questions that we cannot answer without good record keeping systems and financial analysis. And those 3 documents that we talked about earlier, the income statement, the cash flow statement, and the balance sheet. So we're going to talk a lot about the record keeping and ways to do the kind of analysis that we need in order to answer some of these profitability questions in a really approachable way. Okay. Close this chat. Here we go. Okay. So one way that we can approach one tool, I guess, that we can use to help with some of those questions around profitability are the concepts of farm budgets, right? I think most folks are familiar with the concept of budgets, but please feel free to tell me I need to spend a couple minutes on there. You know, it's thinking through beforehand this year what expenses and revenues are going to come in next year, or you know, during a specific period of time. A lot of times we see them annual, but they don't have to be. When I'm working with small diversified producers, I usually work on the 3 different budget types that you see on the screen: whole farm budgets, enterprise budgets, and cash flow budgets. When these are combined with the annual records, harvest logs, sales data, shrink logs, all kinds of things that are like, this is what happened on my farm today, your annual records, they create the backbone of those 3 financial statements that we talked about, right? Balance sheets, net income, and cash flow. I promise we're not going to spend too much time on this kind of like slide stuff, but I think it's important for us all to have this baseline. So I appreciate, even if this is not new to you, you sticking with me here. So I'm assuming that we're all pretty familiar with the concept of a whole farm budget. In simplest terms, really, it predicts all the monies that the farm will bring in a year minus what the money the farms will pay out in a year. And again, notable that the timescale is generally annual, but it could be month to month. If we kind of think of it like a family budget, you could count all of the dollars your family made for the year from, say, one full-time salary job, plus the side hustle of selling crafts on Etsy, I don't know, plus savings account interest, and then take away or minus all of the dollars your family spent that year on things like rent and groceries and concert tickets. And what's left over is what is a savings for a family, but it's often called profit in a business, or if you spend more than you've earned, a loss. This is shown really simple in 1 year. This farm brought in $17,000 in total revenue. So we've got our blue line there. Sometimes you're going to hear revenue referred to as income. We kind of use them interchangeably. This farm then spent $25,000 in expenses. This simple kind of table shows us that the farm lost $7,500. I'm going to pause here and leave room for questions. I know some folks are like, yep, old hat. Let's move on. But anyone, does this make sense to folks? If no one comes off mute, I'm going to assume we're good. Great. Sometimes we see these in with multiple years next to each other. So I just wanted to orient you to the way that these kind of budgets show up on the screen too. We have year 1 in a column, and then year 2, and then year 3, right? And so I think it's really hard if you're not used to seeing a budget set up this way, just to get oriented to that. And so that gray title line, yeah. Okay. The thing that we're going to talk a lot about tonight is enterprise budgets, right? Each whole farm budget is made up of 1 or more enterprise budgets. An enterprise budget is focused in, like often on a single crop or livestock operation, or sometimes we'll see them for a market channel like a farmer's market or CSA. And if we think about the whole farm budget as concert music, right? Enterprise budgets are a way of focusing in on just the percussion section, or even just the triangle. We cut out all of that like concert noise to assess what the triangle gives back or takes away from the sound of the show as a whole. Is a triangle totally distracting from the entire song? Is the drum player amazing and that's the reason why everyone bought tickets to the show? Enterprise budgets are going to help us kind of assess the profitability and cost structure of that specific music section or farm enterprise, right? They can help us answer some of the questions that we all just dumped into the chat earlier. So we're going to talk a little bit about them. On the screen, you'll see an enterprise budget for just laying hens. This is like very, very simple. Same gray line as the title line. And then there's 3, excuse me, hold on. Okay, sorry. The gray line is the title line here. And then you can see my pointer if I come over here, right? There's 3 years again of revenue in the blue and expenses in the yellow, and then the difference between the two, year 1, year 2, and year 3. So say this was 2024, we spent $11,000 to make almost a little less than that in egg sales. I see a chat, Emily, you'll tell me if I need to look at it right. At this point, I just want to pause and make sure it is, just because this gross margin thing can be a little bit confusing to some folks. So at this point, it's not a super key concept. Gross margin is revenue minus production costs. And then net income. Yeah, well, we won't get into that right now, but any questions that I should look at? Emily, we're good?
We are good. And just a
Okay.
reminder for everyone that this is being recorded, and I will send out the recording to you all afterwards. So you can, if you need to like go back and listen to something again, you can definitely do that. Because I know when I started learning all this budgeting stuff, it took me repeated tries to figure it out. It's like, all right, I'll just keep hitting myself with this stuff over and over again until it enters my little farmer brain.
It's so true. And what we're gonna do is we're going over this stuff now, and then we're gonna all do it together. So hopefully that sinks in a little bit more too. Okay, where was I? So I think it was just talking about how this small budget that we see on the screen is just anything that has to do with laying hens. So we're only looking at $10,800 in egg sales, and then $10,977 in egg production stuff, the stuff you like, cartons and laying hen feed and that kind of stuff. It's the triangle or the drum section of the entire concert here. So let's see what we got. Oops. Okay. So here's another way to see this, right? The budget on the left-hand side is your simple whole farm budget that we saw on that first slide. Remembering that the whole farm budgets are the whole business. You know, Go Lucky Farm brought in $17,494 this year. And then we spent $25,000. So the farm as a whole lost 75. And if we come over here, this is the quick start farm. This is the same budget, but we can see that laying hens and meat chickens are underneath this revenue line item. So we're saying, oh, these are the two enterprises that are underneath and explaining this kind of 17,000. We have $10,000 in egg sales and almost $7,000 in meat chicken sales. And so that means our total revenue is 17,494. Like a pretty high level overview, but do we see how an enterprise budget fits kind of into that whole farm budget? Feel free to come off mute if you have a question right now. Okay. All right, so enterprise budgets, a little bit more. So where we just were is a whole farm budget. We've got we're referencing two enterprise budgets in here, right? Ooh, we've got laying hens and meat chickens. And so those are two enterprises that we're gonna wanna expand on and understand what's happening. So when we look at what we're understanding what's happening in laying hens, this is the one we saw before, and we can expand that just a little bit to say, okay, of that $10,800 in revenue that we had, that was because we sold 1,300 dozen eggs. And we sold all of those eggs at a retail price of $8 a dozen. So 10,000 is coming from 8 times 13.50. And it gets us to, it gets us to a production cost per dozen if we divide 13.50. No, these are our expenses. If we divide our expenses by the 13.50 we sold, to a production cost of 813. I'm kind of glossing over that for now, and that's a little bit intentional, just being like, we're going to get to that. There are more details. The way I think of this is like the Russian nesting dolls, right? There's like layers that you can get more and more detailed in.
The question in the chat, Jesse, and it
Yeah, tell
is,
me.
what do we do with that negative number?
I would love to hear from the person who asked it. Like, I don't know, what do we do? Like, first of all, this is just a number on a spreadsheet, right? So you can ignore it, you can try to change it, you can cry about it, we can laugh about it, we can share it with the world, or we can never tell anybody. I think the idea of it being on the spreadsheet is just like, it just exists. Like, we don't have to give it any power, or we can say like, okay, what can we do to make that a positive number if we want it to be positive? And we're going to see that in just a few minutes when we actually practice with these spreadsheets. But tell me more about why you asked that question if you feel like you want to.
I was just asking that question for as taxes is concerned. So will we put that on our taxes? And then what happens when we put it on our taxes?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I'm not a tax accountant or a lawyer or anybody with any any more power than education. And so take this with a grain of salt, right? What you do with a loss on taxes is really a great discussion for you and your accountant. Lots of farmers lose money every single year. It depends on the state that you live in and whether or not you're a hobby farm and lots of other things. Yeah, I don't want to go too much into taxes, but I'm sure I can send you resources on taxes for after this so that we don't get distracted from that. Does that work?
That's fine.
Cool.
Thanks.
Okay. I'm assuming there's no other questions in the chat, so I'm gonna just keep going. Again, enterprise budgets. What we have here is sales, and this is like one big bucket that we're going to look at specifically on your farm. And this is not the only way to do this, right? There's some farms that I work with do it on pen and paper. Some folks use Excel, Google Sheets, Airtable, QuickBooks, and there's a lot of tools online that can help you kind of drill down into your business to say like, what's going on with peonies or aquaponics workshops? Are they making any money this year? Here is an example of an enterprise budget tool from UNH that incorporates heat for winter tunnel greens. All of these, I put little QR codes, and you're going to get the slides or you're going to get the recording and the slides. And so you'll be able to take screenshots or use the QR codes. This is a whole farm record keeping tool from Cornell that is actually pretty great. Again, Excel spreadsheet. This one was an online tool, and this is an Excel spreadsheet. And then for my clients, I use this like simple outside but fancy under the hood kind of Google Sheets template. And I'll be sending you all this template after tonight. So what I'd like to do is go through it a little bit and say like, let's break things down together and see how this works and talk through some examples about how we could use this all together. But first, I would like to know everyone's experience level with Excel so I can kind of tailor that. So I think I have a poll. Emily, if you want to launch that poll, that would be helpful.
The poll is launched.
Thank you. And probably for the folks who are watching the recording, I'm just asking what the skill level is of the group for Excel or Google Sheets. few folks still participating, but it's looking like got some get around and novices, so that's great. There are a couple of folks who have said never used it, and so my email's gonna be in this in the last slide at the end of this. And so if you're like, yep, I need one-on-one help, just let me know. Emily can help you, I can help you. Like, we've got lots of folks. If you're feeling frustrated, we don't want that to be. So I'm gonna, I can end this poll because we got lots of folks, and then we don't need to share the results. Okay. I think, oops, yep, that was my poll. Okay. So what the plan is to try it out. And we've got a wide range. So again, just come off mute or ask a question in the chat if you need to. For this scenario, we're gonna go into an online spreadsheet and pretend that we are growing spinach in the winter, which I'm hoping that is applicable to some of you. So you can help me build this tunnel enterprise budget that we're gonna build. I use this handy high tunnel map template, which I also put a QR code in the slide for, because I thought it was really great. I'm a visual person, and so it was really helpful to be like, okay, this is how I'm going to map out my tunnel for this coming year. And the scenario that we're going to work with is that we have a 30 by 96 high tunnel, and we've got 4 3-foot beds. I'm going to stop sharing. My computer's being really slow, so we're gonna chat while this is trying to load up. Is anyone growing spinach in a high tunnel? Or winter greens, or thinking about it, or any winter production at all? Barbara has in the past.
I'm growing.
Okay,
I'm
well,
growing
let's
spinach and greens.
one. Okay. How about in the summertime? What are y'all using your high tunnels for? I can change this to be more applicable.
I'm actually looking to grow mushrooms in them during the winter.
Cool. Love that. Thanks, Bruce. Lucy in the chat says greens are in, but won't be available till spring. What else? No one else is growing in high tunnels. We should not be talking about high tunnels.
Well, I don't have a high tunnel yet. I'm going through NRCS funding for Equip, and so that's why I signed up for this program, this webinar.
Great.
So,
And what are you gonna plant? What are you gonna plant in there once you have it?
we're doing aquaponics. We're gonna raise tilapia. I think it's gonna be red tilapia, and we're gonna do all type of municipal herbs and leafy greens and stuff like that.
Oh, cool. I didn't realize that you could do aquaponics in NRCS tunnels. So awesome. Okay, I am going to share again, and
one more
go
thing,
ahead.
they're not actually approving it. It's under special circumstances, so we're trying to cross all our T's and dot all our I's.
Thank you. Well, you'll have to update us on being pioneers in that space.
All right.
Okay, so What I hope that you're seeing now on the screen, besides my messy desktop, you can see this spreadsheet.
Yes, I can see the spreadsheet.
Okay, great. So what I have for you all here, which again, you're going to get access to at the end of tonight, and permission to reach out to us if you need one-on-one help with it, is this Farm Financials workbook from UNH, but also like just this really great group of folks has worked on it. So when you get here, you'll land on this landing page, which has short instructional videos that are built in. And so I just wanted to point that out of like, if you get this and if you use it, please start on this landing page and go through these wonderful YouTube videos that we have. Not only do you not have to listen to me ramble in a really incoherent way, which I have been doing for the past half an hour, you get to look at our YouTube videos that are much more edited and feel on target, and you can play them over and over again, and they're shorter. Yeah, always start here. Now, there's a lot going on in this template, so I kind of want to make sure we don't get overstimulated trying to keep up. I know it's really hard to look at somebody else's spreadsheet, so we're just going to go through a quick orientation first. This first tab is that quick start budget. So this looks like a whole lot like the whole farm budgets that I showed you on the first slide, right? We've got our years across here, year 1, year 2, year 3. We've got our revenue, and this blue line totals up everything that's happening within like all the enterprises that we select. And then we've got expenses that come down here. And what's amazing is that when we add something in this spreadsheet, say we're going to add, I don't know, mushrooms, because we're doing mushrooms in a high tunnel. Oh, of course. It's pulling the information in, both on revenue and for expenses. And so the way that it does that for each of these enterprise budgets is that each enterprise has its own little tab down here. And there's a lot of tabs. So I don't want you to get too overwhelmed, but we're just going to dip into the laying hens one to see what that looks like and how this $8,000 gets here. And then dip into the broilers one to see what that looks like and how that gets there. And then do a little practicing on our own. So, laying hens. Got this kind of tabs hidden so there's less stuff. But year 1 here, this is all the information that we're gonna input, again, just about laying hens, right? We're gonna put, we raised 100 animals this year, and those 100 animals gave us 1,000 dozens sellable eggs. One thing that I should point out about these spreadsheets is that like this line up here that says update values in green cells to make this budget your own, right? And so like green in this area means go. White means that there's this formula happening in the background, and I know there's some folks who haven't been familiar with formulas before, but basically like this is the thing that's going to automate some stuff and make this easier for you. We've got 100 animals and 1,000 sellable eggs. We're not going to write on here. We're only going to write in the green cells. So if I make this a little smaller, is that really bad for you all? Is that good? Emily, can you just nod? I can see your face. Okay, great. Okay, so what did we do with these 850 sellable eggs, right? So we have 100 chickens and they gave us this many eggs, and we have this kind of 15, we think 15% we're going to lose or going to break, or I'm going to eat probably. And so 150 of those dozen is going to be like this accounts for loss by predation, right? And so that gives us 850. dozen sellable. And the next thing that we're going to think about, so this is the production section, and the next thing we're going to think about is this sales section, right? Okay, so if I have 850 dozen sellable eggs, where am I going to sell those and how much for? And the tabs that I have in here for right now are retail, wholesale, and other sales venue. So this would be like for a CSA, or we could kind of adapt it for something else specific, like XYZ restaurant. So I have decided this year at my farm, Lucky Friends Farm, that my 850 eggs are going to be 100% sold at retail. We're not going to sell any wholesale, and we're not going to do any for a CSA. And I know that these two are both green, so I should fill them in. And so my retail price per dozen is $8,000. So if I sell 100% of my 850 dozen at $8, I'm going to make $8,000. Because there's nothing else to add up here, this also says $8,000, but if I had done, say, 50 and 50, so 50% at $8 and 50% at $6, that would give us a gross revenue, or kind of laying egg income, of $67.50. That's the sales section. And there's also going to be this expense section, which we just have right here. I have a little bit hidden because it was too much to look at, but our total input costs are 32. And we've got a section for labor, which we're going to go over in just a second. And it gets us to this gross margin of, we're losing $3,600 on eggs, which is like a little bit sad, but yeah, the last 2 minutes has just been to orient you to the screen, which again is really hard, but we've got that production section, we've got that sales section, and we're going to add in some expenses and labor. And this 3,600 gets sucked up back over here. 36, oh, hopefully it does. That would be really embarrassing if my whole thing didn't. 6750, well. Oh no, okay, 6750. Here we go. So that's revenue there. Okay, so the next enterprise that they like to they have on their list here is meat chickens or broilers. So we're going to just go look at the broilers and see what's going on in here. Again, we have a production section. This is talking about 250 animals raised, and without getting into the details of how these weights work, we end up with 956 pounds of sellable meat. And we're going to sell 100% of that meat at $6 a pound. And that's going to bring us 57 in revenue. 57 comes again down here. Is that flow kind of, are you seeing that? Do I need to stop more in there? Anybody? That 57 comes back here into 57. Great. I'm not hearing anything, so we'll keep going for a second. Actually, it's almost, so it's 6:54. We're just going to take a 3-minute pause so I can fill my water and everybody can stand up for a sec. Feel free to take care of yourself for just a second. I will be right back. Okay, so I got some more water. And it's only been 2 minutes, so just gonna hang for another minute until I see Emily come back. Okay, we're gonna get started here again. Hopefully you just gave yourself a minute to either stand up or get some more water or shake your head or curse my name for talking about all these numbers and things without pausing enough for you. What we're gonna do now is, I think what we've tried to do is say, like, okay, we've got this quick start budget, which is like your whole farm budget, right? And it's made up of these little enterprises. So let's try and build one of those enterprise budgets together, so that you kind of have the tools to do it on your own for the tilapia or some of the other questions workshops that you were thinking about doing. So I've got this demo high tunnel one, and if you remember back, I think I said that we had a 30 by 96 high tunnel, right? And we're really just going to focus in on 1 year and 1 bed, try and like cut out the noise of like, well, how many, like less math for right now, right? And let's just do 1 30 by 96 bed. So again, we're updating the cells in green, and I've pre-filled this out for us. So we're just going to go through it, and Liz is apparently the only wintergreen high tunnel person who's doing this so far. So if there's a number that you're like, Jess, you're totally wrong, just let me know. So I've got a 30 by 96 high tunnel, and I'm thinking 4 3-foot rows. And so my research into the enterprise budgets and the existing studies say that yield is going to be 288 pounds per bed. And again, if we were doing this for, say, I don't know, overwintered leeks or something else, like we would just change this up, right? So it could be square feet, or it could be acres here. It could be ponds. I don't know how you do aquaponic square feet, but
Jesse, where are you getting the yield per square foot data? You said you had some research that you looked at.
yeah, I don't have any open right now, but I have actually, I put the link in. I put the link in. It's here. So when you get this, there's a winter spinach how-to guide that has references to a bunch of different studies. So that will be in there when you get that tonight.
So for other crops that people might be growing, is there a general way that you like to find the sales or the yield data, or
Yeah, it's a good
are you good
question.
at
And
Googling, or like how do you find it?
it's a good question. I think when you're in the beginning stages of a farm, so I haven't ever planted this thing before, or I haven't ever planted this thing before in a high tunnel, or I haven't ever done it in the winter. There's a lot of Googling, right? There's a lot of, this is what the back of the seed packet says. I go to Johnny's and I say, Johnny's has a yield calculator. And so I'm putting my information in there. But sometimes it's just a wild, awesome guess, right? And you're like, this is what I think can happen. My friend at the farmer's market who's also growing this says that this is their yield, but we have a totally different soil type, and I have no idea how cold this winter is going to be. And did I forget to turn the irrigation on twice? And was there a total lull problem? Like, there's so many different variables that make it really, really hard to make a good, accurate guess. We can collect tons of information online and from organizations that support farmers like the seed companies, but at the end of the day, that first year is going to be a guess. And then hopefully what we're doing is using our records like, oh, last year the yield was this. And so we have something to kind of go on. Any other farmers want to chime into how they're getting that yield data? Emily, you grow flowers, don't you? How are you thinking about yield at your farm?
Um, I put everything into QuickBooks and then deal with it later. So, I tend to not be a good person at taking and keeping records during the season, but I am very good at invoicing because I want my money. So as long as I get everything in my QuickBooks invoice, I can go through later and look at what the, not necessarily like perfect yields, but what I was harvesting to sell. Because usually with flowers, unless I'm selling it, I'm not going to harvest it.
Yep, yep. Awesome. Thank you for being honest. I appreciate you. I think the biggest takeaway from hopefully just like throwing you into the spreadsheet today with me is to not let not knowing the exact number stop you from trying it out. Like this exists on a spreadsheet, maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong. We can make decisions based on it, yes, but like we can also tweak things and go back and reform and use our actual data once we have it to say like, oh, interesting, that was wrong, that was right. Okay, so we talked really just about this production section where we're saying, okay, we have one bed that's going to yield, that study said that there was 40 pounds per square foot. So my total yield is going to be 288 pounds over the whole season for one bed. And so I've got 288 pounds of spinach to sell. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to sell that wholesale. My sister owns a restaurant and I can just like dump it out for their spinach salads, right? And the price is going to be $4.50 a pound. Like that's just what my sister said they can do. So for right now, this is my first year. I'm just going to go with that. And if I sell all 288 pounds at $4.50 a pound, I've got 100% in here. That's going to bring me $1,296 in spinach revenue for the whole season for one bed. Now, what I have to do when I'm building this budget is try and put in the expenses that I think are going to be for spinach for the whole year. So I looked at this study. I don't suggest really Googling your way through this expenses section because the budgets that you're going to see online from different universities are probably not in 2024 prices. And so for expenses, I think that's one area that I would actually go to a company where you're going to buy something and say like, how much is a seed tray or a, manure right now? If these aren't numbers that you have already. So with that caveat, I did what I just told you not to do by using the budget from online over that is kind of nested over here. But I've got $30 worth of seeds and plants purchased. And this is kind of my notes section and where if you're using this budget, I would encourage you to put your notes. Kind of explaining what my math is. $7.45 in seeds, $6.25 in flats, $3 in trays, and $13 in germination mix. For fertilizer and amendments, I'm gonna say chicken manure, $15. You're in here and you're like, I'm not going to do any fertilizers and amendments. Like, just know that this is totally customizable. You could say like, I want this to be called chicken manure. That's fine. So that's even though these over here aren't in green, you can totally customize them for what you need.
Just a quick pause. There's somebody who cannot see the shared screen. Is everybody able to see the shared screen? Or if there's anybody else who can't see it, just let me know and I will help you out. All right, I'm seeing thumbs up and I'm seeing Renee can see. All right, I will work with the person who can't see and we'll get this figured out.
Cool. Maybe they're on a
Thank you.
phone. Sometimes that happens and you just have to swipe over. Okay, so I went through and I've got some chicken manure, I've got some growing supplies. What I was thinking about was trays, germination mix, flat. And now that I'm seeing that I did germination mix twice, but okay, I've got gas, fuel, and oil, and because this is not a heated tunnel, I kind of am not going to put anything in there, but if you have a high tunnel or thinking about heating your high tunnel, here's a good spot for it. We've got pest control. I was thinking about like little vole traps or something like that. Packaging and labels. And I've got this other line item for the things that always come up, you know. Maybe you need structures for whatever you're growing. Like if you have something that's overwintered that needs support, or twisty ties, or kind of those growing supplies that kind of get lost. What's really important, and that I want you to remember when you're developing this section of your own enterprise budget, is these are all the expenses that are associated with, just in this case, spinach. So if I stopped growing spinach tomorrow or this year or next year, all of these expenses would go away. What you don't see in here is things like QuickBooks fees and taxes and I don't need to think of them because I'll show you where they are. They're all right in here. Okay, these are your overhead costs that are not associated with the triangle section, with the drum section, with your high tunnel spinach or producing eggs. What we're talking about within the enterprise budgets is really just the costs associated with growing high tunnel spinach and the sales associated with high tunnel spinach. It's one of the key things I want you to not forget after tonight, of that like difference between kind of narrowing in on just the enterprise and the whole farm. The only expenses in here are going to be what's related directly to your growing. Okay, I feel like I've been talking at you for a while now, and so I'm gonna ask for some participation. Let's see. We don't have a lot of folks who are growing greens right now, but I know that we probably have some folks who are used to seeding, and so this section is the labor section. And so what we need to do here is estimate how much time it's going to take us to do these things, right? And so we've got our greenhouse seeding. How much time do we think it's going to take to seed for one bed of spinach for a whole year? And I think it would be helpful. I know you're not doing spinach, but like, I don't know, how long does it take you to seed anything? It could be beets, it could be, that's a bad example, it could be lettuces, it could be summertime, wintertime. What do you think?
Depends on the person.
Emily, are you a competitive gal? Can you do it real fast?
Oh, so fast.
Okay, well, tell me how long it takes you.
Oh,
2 hours.
you know, Sucker, you should.
I said 2 hours.
2 hours for the whole year. Love it. Okay, and how about bed prep? I know you all have done some bed prep in your lifetime. Remember, it's a 3 by 90 bed, and I'm thinking it's like already there, right? We're not constructing the high tunnel here. We're getting this bed ready to get spinach in it. Well, I
I'm
gave you a
seeing
pretty
the
good
30 minutes per bed here. Did you say we're
Yeah.
planting 4 beds or 5 beds?
We're just doing one bed right now.
Oh, just 1 bed?
Yep. I know I gave you guys a cheat sheet. And direct seeding and transplanting. I said that we could do like 3 trays an hour, probably. Okay, so I see just like how fast the time is going. So I'm just gonna go like this, and these are not real numbers, but we're just gonna say I'm filling these all in. 6 and 3 and 10, washing and packing, that's a lot. Okay, so you're gonna do these estimates, right? You're gonna say, yep, it would take me this long throughout the year for this one bed. And again, we're using this notes column to say like, okay, well, how do I break this down? I can do 30 minutes a bed, and so that's a half an hour, right? And so again, back to the like, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Like, we're going to get a number in here, we're going to do an estimate, and then next year we're going to do a time trial and see if I'm faster than Emily at seating, right? And so we can go back and say like, oh my God, I thought it's actually 90 minutes per bed. Can't believe that, we are so wrong. And we go back and like we say like, here are the things we need to fix, here are the things that we are like right on the money on. So we've got this total labor hours of 38 hours for one bed for the whole season. And this labor section looks like this. We've got 38 hours, and oh, green beans go, we're gonna say $15 an hour. So our spinach costs us $563 in labor. Questions so far? Now, I will say that like 90% of my farmers that I work with will say like, oh, I don't pay myself, so I can just get rid of that whole labor section, right? Was anybody thinking that while I was doing this? That like, it doesn't really matter because I'm not paying myself. I can't see you all, but I have a feeling that some of you were. And I'm gonna encourage you to really go through this and do this estimate because, well, for a couple of reasons, right? Because if you all of a sudden were not able to do your job, right? Like you fell down, you broke a leg. This actually happened to one of my farmers a couple of years ago. They fell, they broke their leg, and they have sheep. They're a sheep farmer. And they had to pay somebody to do everything for 6 months while the person was recovering. And they had already taken deposits on their meat. And so their deposits didn't include the idea of having to pay somebody. And so they ended up losing money for that whole year because I hadn't included those labor rates. And so I think it behooves of us. It's really helpful if we add in those labor hours. And I think it gives us a more realistic price. And I'm going to show you how we're going to get to price right now. Okay, so I'm doing a lot of scrolling here. I apologize. Labor cost comes to 536, and this expense line does 685. This adds our labor cost with our input costs, sometimes also called production costs. And that gives us a total expenses of $685. So we had 288 pounds to sell. We sold it for $1,200. It cost us $685 in production costs. And so we made $611 on that spinach. So that's pretty great. Like, what's the positive? And so we like to see positive numbers. One of the cool things that I really like about this spreadsheet is that then it gives us a production sales cost per unit. Okay, so it takes $685 is our total expenses divided by 288 pounds. That means that it costs us $2.38 to raise that 1 pound of spinach. I think this is a really useful number. I think actually I saw it in somebody's question that they pulled in. One of the ways we can use this number and say like, oh, this is like the minimum that I could even charge without thinking about losing money, right? And what we see is that we've got $611 that goes back to our whole farm budget. So everything is in here. This is it's nested in here in the revenues minus expenses. And we're gonna bring those $611 over here into this whole farm bucket in order to pay some of these big costs in here. So yeah, I feel like that was a lot for right now. So I'm gonna stop sharing and just check in with folks. Lisa, Jasper, I can see you're not asleep yet. So that is like a little bit promising. How are we doing?
Can I
Matt,
actually ask a question?
yeah.
I feel a little bit bad because I'm actually working as an intern for New Entry, but farming is something that I've had a lot of experience with and I want to do in my life. So I find this very interesting. In the labor kind of breakdown that you had, one of your sections or subsections, I guess, was clearing the bed and then cover cropping. So that extends slightly beyond just the consideration of spinach. And so I'm wondering a little bit about kind of the interconnection there between transferring like from one enterprise to the like setting up for the next one, and how you kind of think about the flow, because that is something that's very important with farming, and I'm sure with budgeting and, you know, things like crop planning, you know, how you're thinking about flowing from one crop or enterprise as we're trying to think about this from one into the next, and where to kind of draw that line of, you know, cover cropping is considered here rather than in the next crop. Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I don't know that I have a good answer for you, or an answer that's going to be like sticky or relevant for everybody. I think so. What I heard your question was is like, what about the tasks or expenses that are for more than one thing, right? The cover crop is going to give back to like anything that's growing in that tunnel, and there are certain labor hours where I'm going to go out with a bucket of feed and I'm going to hit 4 different enterprises or livestock animals out there. And so like, how do you make those minute differentiations? For something like cover crop, I would suggest just decide on one thing and stick to it, right? And so if whatever the crop is that is on right before the cover crop gets the expense of cover crop, great, stick to it every time. And if it's whatever crop is coming in after it gets that expense, great, stick to that. If you want to take it and you're going to say cover cropping is the entire, that's labor that's for the entire farm, we're going to put it out into our whole farm budget, right? As long as you stick to it and do the same thing, I don't think there's a huge wrong right answer there. But I think it's the kind of thing we want to be thinking about when we're in these spreadsheets. What is this activity? What is this expense? What is this revenue? And what bucket do we put it in? If we're having a hard time deciding, well, put it in the whole farm budget. And I think that's my 101 answer. I think if we were getting into 204, if that's a thing, I would say there's really great strategies on only having enterprises that use cover crop and get benefits from cover crop pay for cover crop. And so we're going to divide it based on sales or based on percentage of acres or percentage of labor. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance. You can make it as complicated as you want it to be, but as long as you're thinking about it and doing the same thing.
So the answer to your questions.
Question.
Yeah.
The spreadsheet that you have there and all that, is that required? Like, is the purpose of this, if you have a high tunnel, that this type of reporting is required and this is the way to do it? I don't have one, but I was considering it. So I'm just trying to understand, if I do that, like, what is the requirements of reporting, and is this kind of the method of doing so? Or is this just one option?
I wish it was required. No, but no, it's not. And not as far as I know. And I don't know who it would be required by. Like, you mean NRCS
know
who might
if-
be paying for it, or
Yeah, like if you got, help towards the purchase of a high tunnel, do you have to report? And is this what the state or whoever is looking for to report back if you have to? I'm not sure the rules yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a great question. And no, I don't think so. I have not heard of any federal or state agency requiring anything to do with financials, but
Okay.
there could be something out there. This is just a spreadsheet that we made that I think it's useful when talking about high tunnels, because a lot of people say, well, NRCS is giving away high tunnels. You can get one for free. Let's just get one. Let's get 7. And there's a lot of benefit to them, and there's a lot of expenses. There's a lot of, I think, brain work that can be happening of like, what is this new high tunnel going to do for me in my farm business? Is it going to be additive? So let's take a drill down enterprise budget and look at it and say, what are the real expenses we are going to incur, and what are the opportunities for money that we might be able to make from it? And I wouldn't say it's definitely not exclusive to high tunnels, right? I've got 17 different enterprise budgets in here that have sheep and all kinds of things that you're not going to put into a high tunnel. So this is just a method of thinking about decision making and trying to project what costs and expenses might be based on what you're doing on your farm.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Totally.
Hello?
Yeah.
So do you have tips on how you can input like expenses associated with like individual enterprises just on the day-to-day? Because I guess I'm seeing like the total expenses for the year of like this enterprise or spinach, but like, are there tabs or certain tabs or something associated with those costs that you input like day to day? Like I bought this and it goes towards this, and then it can kind of tally, then it can be tallied up at the end of the season.
Yeah. I'm going to share my screen again. That's a great question. I think there's 2 parts. The first part is, yes, there's a tab for that. Let me come over to, I have it hidden, bookkeeping. So this is a tab where you can do just that, Matt. And so you'll be able to access this after tonight if you want to use it. But the thought behind this section is that you could go into your bank statement, right? Because everyone has a separate farm and personal bank account. Everything that's on your bank statement should be to do with the farm. And so we could we're going to customize this top line so that it matches the layout of rows and columns for your bank statement. And then you could paste in this thing and it would say like, okay, for 2, I paid Johnny's for seeds and it was $56. And the category, these categories are actually going to come up from your quick start budget overheads, but we can add to them if you wanted to for individual crops.
Yeah. There's another question I have is like, because if you're buying things that you're going to use for multiple enterprises or multiple crops, like you buy fertilizer and you use it, for several different things, I can see that would make it tricky to like calculate, the enterprise
Totally
budget of every individual thing, right? So.
Totally right. And so we're gonna come up here to fertilizer, and I think you could probably tell me how much fertilizer you used on a bed, right? Like, or at least in a high tunnel, you could say like, oh yeah, we used 4 bags. Because hopefully you're going off a soil test or something like that. I'm looking for confirmation because I'm not a farmer. I just do spreadsheets, but you could tell me that in theory.
Yeah, I mean, if I keep really diligent records of every time, right? I'm applying it. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, right? Like, in order to understand how much it costs us to grow a pound of spinach, we have to keep pretty diligent records or be able to make like a pretty good guess. And so 2 points, right? Like, in order to get to this number and say like, okay, what is my floor price for spinach for just production costs? I need to be able to fill some of this out. And in order to fill some of this out, I need to like at least have a little bit of a guess of what I did for records, of what I did for fertilizer. But say I was wrong, right? Okay, so this one I did 30 times a half a pound. What if I like was wrong and totally underestimated, and I instead of 30, I thought it was 2. So it went from $1 to $15. And it like barely changes some of our production projected costs. And so I think my point there is, again, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good. Like, a good guess is a good guess, and get better at record keeping one bite at a time. And yeah, advice from other folks who have done some of what he's asking about. Talking about, well, we started talking about like how to break things up between crops, and you get one bill from Home Depot or Johnny's or whatever, and so how do you parse that out without driving yourself nuts? Nobody's doing a good job
I
of
guess I
record
kind of
keeping.
just, Matt, I just kind of estimate it sometimes. Like, just kind of just get a rough estimate, like what Jesse just said. Like, you just, it's not going to change it that much, just to kind of get like, so just how much does the seed packet cost, and how much does
Yeah.
those 3 pounds of fertilizer cost?
Or if you're looking at like the end of, you're tallying up your numbers at the end of the season, you know you bought this much or you spent this much, then you could make an estimate of like how much of that went towards this enterprise or this thing. Would that make sense?
Yeah. I guess just whatever makes sense to you too, just like to keep it consistent.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm thinking of is I'm changing plans midstream here, so forgive me. I'm gonna come back to these spreadsheets and just we're gonna look at the power of like adaptability and just like changing things up a little bit. So I am gonna say unhide these. Oops, unhide.
I have another quick question for you, Jesse.
Yeah.
What are some expenses that have come up in high tunnel production that farmers have been very surprised by that you've worked with?
In high tunnel production. Well, I don't know. There's lots of farmers in the room. So for folks who are already growing in high tunnels, anything that surprised you? Let's look at some of the stuff I have listed already. So this is kind of, I don't know that any of these would change if you're based on a high tunnel. But I think some of these labor hours definitely would. I think that's something that surprises folks, especially in the summer. Like, we're constantly rolling up and down sides, and it takes like 17 minutes to do that, and we have 7 high tunnels. And so like adding that up, if you're paying someone $20 an hour, that's kind of an expense that can be surprising how much labor maintenance goes into the maintenance of a high tunnel. I've got this section down here, which we haven't touched on yet, that is capital investments and some of the frost-free hydrants and washing stations that need to be ready for winter if you're looking at season production can be pretty surprising. No surprises from Lucy. Okay. Were you leading me with that? Do you have something that you want to talk about?
I was thinking of like propane costs if people are trying to heat their tunnels.
Oh yeah, yep.
That's always very expensive. If you have to put in electrical, very expensive. Every time I look at that, I'm like, oh, wait, it's $20,000 to get electrical run out there.
Yeah.
So just little fun surprises, I guess.
Yeah, I think of like land development in the sense of site clearing and electricity build out and water build out as we better be looking at those numbers way before we get to this stage of production planning. But yeah, I think those can be all really, really surprising. UNH does have a good heat cost estimator if you're looking for that. We can send you that link. Yeah. What I want to do now is show you kind of maybe the power of doing budgeting this way. So instead of looking at this in years like I have up here, I would like us to look at 1 bed versus 3 beds. I'm going to hide this. And so we just have, we're going through the question in our head of how much spinach should we raise next year? Or should I grow more of this thing, which is a pretty common thing on a farm, right? And so we're going to go 1 bed or 3 beds. 1 bed would give us 288 pounds in sales and pounds to sell, and 3 beds would give us 864 pounds to sell. And so there's questions right there that's like, can I sell 864 pounds? Where would I sell 864 pounds? How much would come in per week is kind of a whole different discussion that's really important to think about as the season goes on, especially if you're doing winter production. But okay, I could sell half of that at $9 a pound retail, and then another half at wholesale, $5.50 per pound. Okay, that's gonna total me $6.62 instead of 13. Like that sounds pretty good. I like this number a little bit better. What if I raise my price to $6 on wholesale? What would happen there, right? And so I can see that change kind of immediately. And so this is kind of a play area, especially for folks who have not started growing yet. What happens, you know, if I do no wholesale at all and I'm just doing retail sales? Oh, I like that number even better. And then the question becomes, can I really sell 864 pounds of spinach at my farmer's market or whatever my retail rate is, right? And so we have more and more questions. We need to sell at least $4.32 down here. That's our production cost. But what if my market, my restaurant that I want to sell to only can pay $3.50? What do I do, right? And so like all of this budgeting just gives us information and jumping off points to have more discussions and say like, what do we do about changing this? And spreadsheets are a good way to see all of that. What do you think? You feel like some of the questions that you typed into the chat earlier today, which I can scroll back to if we want to, could be helped by this enterprise budgeting process, this drilling down of all the expenses in and out of the business? Are there questions that like this is not going to help with? Go back to them. What's on our, okay, so Eric, is Eric still here? What's on our crop list and at what scale? Adding value added products is profitable for farmers market sales. So Ashley was talking about adding value added. We can totally make one of these spreadsheets for value added, right? What else? Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about record keeping before we go. I would also like to address high tunnel construction costs, and just thinking about ways to incorporate them into this enterprise budgeting process. Does that sound like a good plan, or is there something big missing in there that we need to sub out for the folks who are left? Okay, hearing no complaints. I'm gonna go back to spreadsheet land. Okay. So I just made this tab today, so I'm not exactly sure how helpful it is gonna be yet, but I'm happy that you all would be the first folks to trial it out with me. So this tab is not connected to any of the other ones, but I wanted to give you all a place that you could try and work out how much is it going to cost me to build this thing, and does that make sense for me? Do I have the cash flow for it? Where is that money going to come from? Is it going to be a cost share program? So set up much like some of the other tabs that we have. We've got our label. We're going to update this to make it our own, and I didn't do a year across here. I just said, like, okay, we're going to call that tunnel 1, 2, and 3. And this first tunnel is going to be a 30 by 96. We could make this one these sized however you wanted. And we're going to do heated or not. And I outlined some questions here that you might want to think about when you're kind of in that establishment, or should we do this phase? Again, I'm not an accountant. I don't do your taxes. So make sure you're talking to whoever does your taxes about how depreciation is going to work, and are things going to be expensed versus depreciated. I gave you line items here for expenses like site prep. This would be kind of all the pre-work stuff to get your ground level. A frame kit. This is the number I got today from Rimal to do a heated kit. 30 by 96. Construction costs, materials, irrigation, miscellaneous. You could like put all of that in here to get this. Again, this formula sums up everything in green on this line to say cash going out is going to be $28,000. Also give you a labor section to say, like, how much time is it going to take me and the people who I'm hiring, and or just the people I'm hiring. Like, this section is for you to play with there for labor hours. To get a total expenses line and then a cost per square foot, and being able to change that up to say, like, okay, well, what if I just did 30 by 80 instead? And of course you would have to then change these expenses, right? But you kind of get a different cost per square foot. Is this a thought process that you all have gone through on your own when you're thinking about adding in a high tunnel? This chat. Yes, Liz had. Budgeting in this manner works for me. Yes. Cool. Okay, so that is just available for you there if you need it when you're in these spreadsheets. And then if we come back to some of these expenses that we're thinking about, the labor hours is kind of one group of expenses, and then these other production costs, like, takes a lot of record keeping, right? And so, like, I have the best laid plans in January when I'm like working on my budgets and everything is warm and cozy next to the fire, and I'm going through seed catalogs and things are happy, right? And then it's July and I'm like, I totally forgot all the things that I said I was going to do about record keeping, and I don't know where the clipboard that's supposed to be on the hanging in the greenhouse is, and I can't find a pen, and my paper is wet, and like I'm kind of hungry and I'm stressed out because I have to get to farmer's market, and like those record keeping plans kind of fly out the window, right? And so I wanted to spend just a little bit of time hearing from you all of like, oh, one thing that has been really helpful for me in record keeping is blank, or I struggle the most with this, and get crowdsource some information here. So I think this will work best if we just go into breakout groups for a couple of minutes and talk about struggles with record keeping and golden solutions that you've been able to find. And we'll just spend, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes in there, and then we'll come back and talk about it as a group. And I'll set those up now. Okay. So you're going to get an invitation to go into a breakout room, and then I'll call you back in 6 or 7 minutes. Hopefully that works. Okay. So I love when people take a little while to come back. That means that you're having some good discussion. Thoughts that were new to folks or were good to get off your chest in a group that you want to share with everybody?
Well, I'm a bit in the, this is Kathy speaking. I'm a bit in the wilderness of what I'm trying to figure out right now. So it was really helpful to get input from the people in my group and just
Great.
get some good ideas, things that I didn't think about as complementary crops, for example, additional resource, additional revenue streams, etc. Yeah, it was helpful. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Thanks for sharing, Kathy. No need to be in the wilderness all alone. What else?
The group I was in had a lot of different ways to take notes on your phone. And I thought I was one of the only people who did that. So I'm glad that other people are doing it too. One person was using
What are you guys doing?
one person was using their calendar. And I thought that was really cool because then you just like can pull up the date that things happened, and that's nice. Farm Raise was mentioned, and then there was the journal app in iPhone that you can also print out your notes when you're done.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I work for a land trust where a majority of our network are not American born. Not at like most of our network, English isn't their first language learned. And just culturally, there's differences in like production. And it's largely like market farming. Farmers markets are pretty variable, not always consistent. So I help manage a bunch of different properties, like rurally and in the city and urban environments. We are kind of doing like yeah, it's just like baseline like knowledge on how to let these farmers in our network be more independent. And I'm just looking for, I guess, like the easiest way to keep records and how to translate that and any tools out there for that. A lot of people aren't like tech savvy and stuff like that, but they're like amazing farmers and growers. But just to get them over that hump, even in like applying for different like NRCS contracts or something like that, there is a financial record keeping component, which is pretty like low stakes, low bar. But personally, I'm looking to get our producers more independent, like yeah, help them be more independent in doing it on their own, because we're gonna hit a wall of capacity in our staff and how much we
Dave, are you part of the field network?
No. I'm sorry, what?
Are you part of the field network that New Entry runs?
I don't believe so. I'm also fairly new to the job, so I'm like 4 months in.
Okay. I'm going to send you some information about our field network. It's a community of people that teach other farmers, whether it's new American farmers, immigrant farmers, or anybody. And there's a ton of resources for teaching people who have like English as a second language or who are low resource or like not computer literate, and some like paper templates. And that would be, we also have a email listserv that people can post questions to, and there's a bunch of other people who do similar work to what you're doing who could answer questions like that. So I will get
Yay,
you
thank you,
hooked up
Emily.
with that.
And I think hopefully, Dave, when you were in your breakout group, you had some discussion around what's working for other farms. What I always go back to is the best record keeping system is the one that you use, right? And so each one of your farmers gets to decide like, here's the way that works for me in my brain and the skills I have and the capacity I have. And getting really clear on the goals, like here are the pieces of information we have to track. Let's figure out the best way to do that. Like 2 steps, what are the goals? What system works, and then actually doing it. But that system can look radically different depending farmer to farmer, as long as they're getting the information that they need. And it could just be that first budget I started with of revenue and expenses. We want to get to enterprise budgets, that's next year. And it's like this kind of progressing goal that we're always working towards, right? We get more detailed, we get better at knowing how our brains like to do things. I use my voice app on my iPhone all the time, right? Like going into the garlic patch, it's 9:06, done with garlic, it's 9:17. It's really helpful for me to like not have to type. And so there's just ways that all of our brains are going to figure out how to get us to the goals that we have because we set the goals.
That might be more on the administrative side of the land trust I work for, to do that work, because not everybody has emails or even
Yep.
You know, yeah, but
It sounds like the field resources that Emily will send you might have some options, and then you're just gonna use that land trust printer.
yeah.
So the last thing I'm going to do tonight with just a couple minutes left is share with you some homework. I know even though we're not in school, I thought that I would give y'all some homework. And oops, display, switch. Okay, so after tonight, your job is just to try out one or more enterprise budgets, and then maybe a whole farm budget, and then maybe a cash flow budget for this coming year. And if you want to use the template that we played with tonight, great. You use this QR code, it goes to a form, and then you get emailed a copy. But if you want to do it on Excel or in QuickBooks or on a piece of paper or whatever you want, you can send me an email and I can help you with it, or talk to Emily, or talk to one of your local extension people. Just give it a go. That's kind of just like the homework in the sense that I want to give you of like, give it a try, see what happens, come back to it next year, try your record keeping system. What's changed? What's different? What do we want to change? It's this like iterative process that we would just kind of want to lean into. Okay. Let's stop that. Any last questions before I let you go?
Yeah, so when we're adding expenses to enterprise,
Mhm.
in the budget or whatever, do we need to put a formula in, or does it generate a formula for us?
That's a great question. The green boxes, the ones that have a green background, you're gonna type a number in.
Mhm.
Everything else has a formula in it.
Okay.
Yeah. And if those questions come up again in a week and I'm not here, go back to that landing page, watch the videos and say like, oh yeah, that's how it worked. We just have a series of 5-minute videos that hopefully can help get through those things. Cause I can never remember everything someone says on one of these. So, and then if you're still stuck, let me know and I'll check it out.
All right, cool.
I'm gonna wait here for other questions as they pop up. If not, hopefully I'll hear from you. Best of luck. Have fun budgeting. Yeah, let us know how it goes.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming tonight. And just so you know, the registration is open for the next workshop in this series, which is about planning strategies and picking out seeds for your high tunnels. So I will, when I send the record of this, sorry, excuse me, when I send the recording of this workshop to you, I'll also send you guys a link to sign up for that one as well. So thank you all for coming, and thank you, Jesse,
And
for a wonderful night of spreadsheets.
a survey is coming in email?
The survey should open up when you exit out of
Oh,
the
amazing.
Webinar. Yes.
Amazing.
Oh, I
Love
love
it.
technology.
You're so fancy.
Yeah. Oh, so fancy. And thank you to everyone who fills out the survey.
All right, I'm gonna assume that the folks who are still here don't have questions, but last chance.
So sorry.
Don't be.
Did you say you'd be emailing us the link to be able to use those sheets?
Yeah, I can. There was a QR code, but I can
Okay.
have Emily just put a link in, whatever. Yeah, Emily and I will make sure everybody has access.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.